the best response you can have to a payoff in a thriller is someone goes, "Oh right, I forgot. Of course, I should have."
On Story offers a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. All of our content is recorded live at Austin Film Festival and our year-round events. To view previous episodes, visit onstory.tv. On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. This week's On Story, Scott Alexander, co-creator of the Emmy award-winning series, The People vs. O.J. Simpson.
You know, to someone of our age, when you say OJ, you just immediately think of the Bronco and Shapiro and Marcia Clark and the Goldmans and Darden. And it's just like all this stuff and the Glove and Furman. And there was so much that happened. And it's just like, there was like all this stuff and we just like saw it fully formed.
In this episode, Scott Alexander discusses developing and writing one of the most notorious American crime stories for the small screen.
Why don't we stop him, shoot out his tires?
You don't want to shoot out on live TV. We're on every network in the country.
What's the protocol?
The protocol? I don't know, Bill. What is the protocol? We're an armed celebrity fugitive being chased by 12 police cars and 7 helicopters. Christ. I thought I was going to run for mayor.
And we are told by the California Highway Patrol.
So the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were in 1994. The series was 10 weeks in 2016, and I believe you guys were working on it for about 3 years before. So talk a little bit about why you and your creative partner wanted to do it at that point, and how you thought about who your audience would be.
We sort of fell into this on kind of almost a bit of a dare, in that we're feature guys. We'd never done TV before, and we had just switched agents, and we were sort of told that you have to take a TV agent as part of the deal. If you have a feature agent, it's like, okay, well, we're never going to do TV, so it doesn't matter, but sure. And then 3 days later, he calls up. And he says, Brad Simpson and Nina Jacobson, and we knew Nina way back. I actually went to high school with Nina, just in a small world. They have the rights to Jeff Toobin's book, People vs. O.J. Simpson. And they want to do it as a miniseries. And Larry and I have spent 30 years saying no to everything that gets offered to us. And we looked at each other and we said, okay, we'll do it. and we just sort of instantly recognized that the huge tapestry was really cool. And just, you know, to someone of our age, when you say OJ, you just immediately think of the Bronco and Shapiro and Marcia Clark and the Goldmans and Darden. And it's just like all this stuff and the Glove and Furman. And there was so much that happened. And we kind of it was just like it emerged fully formed. We like hung up the phone and we said, it's all about, like, you know, race in America and the LAPD's history with blacks in LA, and it's about the invention of the 24-hour news cycle, and it's about the invention of reality TV, and it's about gender politics and how Marcia Clark got mistreated, and and it's going to be about how OJ got a better deal because he's a famous person and famous people get treated easier. And it's just like there was like all this stuff, and we just like saw it fully formed. We felt that it was approaching 20 years. We started in 2013, and we felt that there was enough perspective. And like I said, OJ was going to be about a lot, but the 20 years sort of allowed us to kind of take a big picture of it. And and whether it's too soon or it's been too long, both of us have kids in our early 20s, and we used them as sounding boards a lot while we were, because it took us a year just to plot out the 10-hour Bible. And, we quickly realized that all our kids knew about OJ was he's that fat guy in Nevada who eats oatmeal cookies. And he's always kind of scowling. So we very strategically added an opening scene of Cuba getting into the limousine.
Mr. Simpson, I have to apologize if I was staring before. I've never picked up a celebrity.
That's cool. I remember the first celebrity I ever met, Willie Mays. Boy, did that blow my mind.
Because we weren't showing the killings, we wanted to see OJ, as Toobin says in his book, being OJ, just being charismatic and likable, and he's shooting the shit with the limousine driver, and he's telling stories about when he met a famous person when he was a kid, and he's just like, he's endearing. Mm-hmm. And we had to establish that because that's what carried a lot of the trial, which was people couldn't believe, oh my God, how could OJ have done this? Mm-hmm. And so our kids don't know any of that, and they don't know about the Bronco chase, and they don't know anything. And so we knew we were writing for two audiences. We're writing for the audience that had seen court TV 20 years ago and thought they were bored by the whole thing. And for that audience, we had to make it interesting for them again, and we had to recontextualize it with all these other themes we were laying over it. And then for millennials, we wanted just to draw them in as just a great piece of story, just like you won't believe this crazy that went down. We had never written TV before, so none of us knew what we were doing. So we made up our own rules, and we decided that each hour was going to have its own high concept. There's the Marsha episode. There's the Bronco episode. There's the race card episode. There was the one episode where we went back in time, the juror episode. Each episode had a big idea, which actually ended up working out really well. We did not meet any of the participants when we wrote the show, and we joked we didn't need to because everyone had written 5 books. So you don't really need to meet Bob Shapiro or Marcia Clark or the Goldmans because there's a stack. So we read a lot of these books, and just to really get everyone's point of view in terms of what Bob Shapiro was going through, what Darden was going through. I mean, they all express themselves in their books, but Toobin set the tone.
But it's also clear that in a lot of scenes where particularly there's people in a room and you don't know exactly what they said to each other, so you're trying to get the essence of it, but also bring what creative writers do, which is make the dialogue interesting.
I mean, well, that's the job. The job is to try to get it right even though you weren't there. And I mean, it's been 4 years since I read Jeff's book, but I believe his introductory paragraph of Marsha, it was like a string of descriptions, but I remember one of them was quick to judge, profanely funny, and deeply caring. And I was like, okay, this is like I like this woman. Like, she's really snappy and she would swear a lot. But she really gave a shit. I mean, she really cared about victims, and she really felt that victims just don't get a fair shake. And she started really identifying with Nicole and just wanting justice for her. And then when you start reading Marsha's book, and then you're getting all the in and outs of the divorce, which that she had filed for divorce, 4 days before the murders. It's like, oh my God. It's like, once you know that, it suddenly spins his character in a completely different way.
Right now, they spend all their time with babysitters. Now, how is that in their best interest?
You know why I have to work so hard? Because I have a family to support.
At least they know one of us is there for them.
So to get to your question, so when we're writing a scene, and then you read Darden's book, and then Darden talks about how when the case broke, he was about to submit his resignation because he was so fed up with the DA's office. He was miserable there. He had a daughter back in the Bay Area. He would drive back and forth to see his family. He just it's like he didn't have any friends down in LA, and he was just sick of it. And whatever dreams he had were long gone. And he was just this Charlie Brown sad character sitting in the corner shuffling papers. And so once you sort of know that's how each one of them was sort of feeling about the world and about their lives, then you put them into scenes. You can just kind of put yourself in their minds, how they would handle it, and then we have a list of facts we have to hit, inside that scene, and then you're just trying to kind of hit those facts while keeping them both in character. What was great was the characters. We're really complex.
Oh, darling, don't. You need to be confident in the strength of what we have, okay?
What you need is some study break.
Oh, no. Turn it down.
I'm taking care of business, woman, can't you see? I gotta make it for you. I gotta make it for me.
Stop it. I could not afford to be accused of having a good time right now.
Well, who's gonna begrudge you of having a good time?
Oh, who? Everyone. Ito, Gil, Larry King.
My pain-in-the-ass ex-husband who's looking for any excuse to take my kids away from me.
One officer rendered 6 kicks and one officer 1 kick.
The series begins not with the murders. Instead, it begins with the actual archival footage of the Rodney King beatings.
That was a big deal. And that was our pitch. Here are the 3 stars, and we're opening with Rodney King. And the executive, she looked at us, she goes, what? Why are you doing that? It's not in the same year? I don't understand. We go, because that informs what the whole show is going to be about. That's going to contextualize the entire trial. It's going to contextualize Johnny, and it's also going to help contextualize it for young people who weren't there. And over the next year was when we started having all of these beatings of Black Americans, and there was the Trayvon Martin case, and there was Eric Gardner, and there were so many, and it started sort of feeling like we were writing something that was happening today. So we have Rodney King, we have the riots, and then we have Johnny say, "This is the problem we have in our society right now," and just announce that, and so the audience goes, "Okay, that's what the show's about." And my take on Johnny, and this was me as a white guy watching the trial, back in '94, was I thought he was a strutting peacock and a bit of a showboat. And I always found Johnny a bit off-putting. I just thought he was just putting on an act, and he did the stuff he put on the bull cap. It was too much showbiz he was doing, for my taste. And our plan in terms of the arc was that Johnny is the peacock, he's the showman for 4 or 5, 6 episodes, and then you start to see how genuine he is, and then you learn that he's been doing these civil rights cases for 30 years. This was our original intention, was the viewer would see Johnny one way at the beginning of the series, and by the end go, "Oh wow, okay, he's really genuine," and sort of see the beating heart of Johnny Cochran. Well, as this stuff started becoming more pronounced, we started wondering if we could really delay that. And then we started getting TV instruction lessons from some of the executives And one of them was, you got to meet all your stars in episode 1. We're like, what? And it's like, how? What? Wait, we have to meet Chris and Johnny the first night? It's like they've got nothing to do with the case. And then we found out that there was a case that Johnny had been working on and that he and Chris actually knew each other. Because Chris was just like stuck in the basement, the DA's just like in the sludge pile of stuff, just shuffling papers. Chris wasn't in courtrooms at that point. And so we basically took all this information that we had planned on waiting 4 or 5 episodes on and putting it into night 1. And suddenly, night 1, just have Johnny just announce, brother, what are you doing here? Why are you working for the enemy? And just Johnny just tells us about the kind of cases he gives a shit about.
Afternoon, Chris. You finished your investigation of the Taylor shooting?
Yeah. I didn't want to just send over the report. I thought it'd be better if we talked in person.
Save your breath, my brother.
Well, let me explain.
Come on. I had your job. I know the drill. The police commission determined the officers acted in self-defense. The officers were scared. There were 7 of them with guns up against 1 mentally ill woman with a knife.
Johnny, I tried. All they have to claim is that their lives were in danger.
Danger. They shot her in the back. It's remarkable to me how many black folks get shot in the backside while they attack, like they're going backwards and forwards at the same time.
Johnny, I wish I could prosecute. It's terrible. Look, if you check the report, you'll see that I slipped in that the officers may not have been 100% truthful.
Oh, please. 1 sentence nobody's gonna read makes you feel better about yourself.
What do you expect me to do?
You know what we're talking about. Choose a side.
To me, the single thing that stood out all these years, and you show it in the actual footage, is the shots of how people who were white watching on like TV screens reacted versus people who were African American.
That was such a big deal. There were, I don't even know who does these polls, but there were polls done, which we were kind of looking at when we were writing the show, and that the sort of like the numbers were just categorically in 95. All the whites said he did it. All the blacks said he didn't do it.
Not guilty. Guilty. Not guilty. And not guilty.
So the tally is 10.
We can all do the math.
Because we knew there's a certain amount of people who believe in OJ's innocence, we didn't want to push them away. We wanted everyone to watch the show, and so we first of all, we absolutely did not want to show the murders because we thought that was tasteless and unnecessary. But we didn't want to say OJ did it. We wanted to indicate it extremely strongly, as opposed to Jeff in his book. He just says on page 1, of course he did it. What we thought was interesting was to present all of the evidence, and the evidence is overwhelming, and present it as in a Jack Webb, that just went over everyone's head, in a Jack Webb, except you, sir, a Jack Webb fashion, just the facts, ma'am, which is just a bunch of very professional cops show up and they just find very, very straight up evidence. There's one glove at Bundy. There's one glove on Rockingham. Her blood is at his house. His blood is at her house. They found all that the first night.
Hey, you should see this.
We're gonna need a criminalist to confirm that that's blood.
Why don't they answer the door?
And the whole, conspiracy idea, which we do in episode 7 was just like insane. The idea that somehow, a call came in, in the middle of the night, and somehow in 2 hours, like 12 cops figured out this crazy plan to move all this blood around, and the cops were they were friends of OJ's. They all used to have pool parties at OJ's house. I mean, that was silly. So we wanted to present all this evidence, which is overwhelming, and have a bunch of completely professional policemen just show up and just do their job. And the only reason, and this is all pre-Google, pre anything, the only reason that they knew to go to OJ's house or knew how to get to OJ's house was because Mark Furman, of all people, had been called to one of the previous 8 or 9 911 calls, the domestic abuse calls, when OJ was beating up Nicole and she's calling 911 saying, "Help me, help me." He had been the cop one of those nights. So he had been to the house, so he knew where the house was. So when they wanted to notify OJ, he knew how to get there. Otherwise back then it wasn't like you could just type into a computer and OJ Simpson's home address comes up.
So, anybody have Simpson's address?
I know where OJ lives. I'm Detective Mark Furman, West LA homicide. I was there years ago, family dispute. It's a few minutes away.
So we wanted to present just the facts very cleanly, which is, well, obviously he did it. When we sort of took a step back, we sort of felt that this story was a tragedy for everybody but Johnny. Johnny's agenda was LAPD has been mistreating blacks forever, and he wanted to get the word out. And the Furman tapes landed in Johnny's lap, and he got them played. And he got them played on TV, which was crazy because the jurors were not in the room when the tapes got played. So it made no sense. So it was victory for Johnny. In my opinion, whether OJ got off or went to jail, it didn't matter to Johnny. What Johnny wanted to do was send a message to America. So it was victory for Johnny.
Yes, no justice, no peace. No justice.
I had 66 allegations of brutality. Like 2 of my buddies were shot and ambushed. I was first unit on the scene. 4 suspects ran into an apartment in the projects. We kicked the door down. I grabbed a girl that lived there, grabbed her by the hair and stuck a gun to her head and used her as a barricade. I walked up and I said, I've got...
For everybody else, their lives were shattered by the trial. Marsha, it was just a debacle. I mean, she ended up, she left the DA's office. Chris left the DA's office. Bob Shapiro was getting hissed in Temple. The Goldmans did not get justice. It was just terrible for everyone. But OJ got out, and we did not want OJ. We didn't want it to be a victory for OJ, and so we had to design the show that OJ loses, and this was really important. And this is one of the things I'm proud of is we figured out the idea of his statue. And so we put the statue into episode 1, and that big statue was in OJ's backyard. We didn't make that up. And again, this is just screenwriting tricks of the trade. You introduce that statue as this Roman god in episode 1, where OJ's just this great looking winner, just in full glory. And then you go to episode 10 and Cuba walks out into the yard and just looks up at that guy and he knows, I'm never going to be that guy again. We needed that ending for the audience to know, okay, OJ just lost.
You've been watching a conversation with Scott Alexander on OnStory. OnStory is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's OnStory project, including the OnStory PBS series, now streaming online, the OnStory radio program and podcast in collaboration with Public Radio International, and the OnStory book series available on Amazon. To find out more about OnStory and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com.
The best response you can have to a payoff in a thriller is someone goes, "Oh, right, I forgot. Of course, I should have."
OnStory offers a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. All of our content is recorded live at Austin Film Festival and our year-round events. To view previous episodes, visit onstory.tv.